Right, I believe we are live. Hello. Hi, Chris, are you there?
I sure am. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Tori. How are you?
I'm really well. What's the time where you are right now?
It's 11 a.m.
All
here in
right, so it's
California.
evening for me and morning for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you got a long day of composing
I
ahead
sure
or
do.
yeah?
A
That's
long day.
exciting.
Yeah,
What
well,
can we see behind you? Is this your studio?
this is my studio. Yes, we're here at my studio. It's that's the live room where I record, and this is the mix room here where I mix and compose and stuff. And there's actually sliding glass doors that separate the two rooms. In fact, they sort of pop out like this, right? So then they seal off the rooms, and there's actually two sets of them so that they soundproof both rooms. So this
Stop
is my
it.
little.
This is like on the ideal home show. I love the Scandi feel. It's really, really clean and must be a lovely space to spend a lot of time in.
It really is, and you really nailed it. Like my wife and I are very into design and minimalism, and that sort of thing. So we like keeping a clean aesthetic.
And you must have been spending a lot of time there recently.
I have. I mean, it's nice that we actually have what we actually share this studio space. She's a graphic designer, and her studio is on that side, and my music studio is on this side. And so we come in together to work. Basically, we commute together, and we'll bring our little toddler as well, and she has a room upstairs as well, so we can all just kind of like, if we need to get away from home, we have our shared office that we come to as a group, and it's a nice sort of way to break up the monotony of quarantine, basically.
Yeah, it must be. And do you get little visitors in the middle of work? Does your daughter come in and visit you in the middle of your work?
Actually, her room is upstairs, and she has windows from her little nursery looking down into my room, and so sometimes I look up and she's kind of banging on the glass. It's really cute, actually. It's
Have
a
you
good
had
room.
any particularly memorable impositions when you've been working or recording?
No, nothing so bad so far. I mean, the truth is, I finished building the studio about a month before the pandemic shut down recording, right? So the last singer that I had in here was the opera star Danielle Denise. She's singing on To Shiver the Sky, my album, and she was here at LA Opera actually giving the world premiere of Eurydice, a new opera by Matthew O'Coin. And she came over and we spent an afternoon here recording. And then, while that was happening, we were just getting all these alerts about like, there might be a quarantine soon, and then boom, just like that, LA shut down. So
We
it's
are
been
at the Stay at Home
wild.
Choir. We are so excited to be working on Sogno Di Volare with you in January. But how lucky that you managed to finish the album.
Oh my God, right? Like, geez, I mean, we just barely got the last recording session in there. Danielle was the final piece of the puzzle, and we got her, and then suddenly the world shut down, and then mixing. I mean that like instead of the traditional thing where you go to your engineer's place and you mix together. I mean we had to work out some way to do everything remotely. I mean it's been a real challenge. I mean as every one of you musicians out there knows that the world just kind of turned upside down for us in particular. And we're all just trying to find ways to kind of cope with it until normalcy returns. But thank goodness I at least recorded that project and got it out the door in time because we
So
can do this now.
yeah, tell us more about the album. What was the conception for it? How did it come about?
Sure. So, Sogno Di Volare is actually a piece that I wrote back in 2016. I was commissioned to write another theme song for the video game Civilization 6. I had previously written a song for Civilization 4 called Baba Yetu. So they brought me back. I wrote Sogno Di Volare, and it turned out to be pretty popular. And I thought, well, maybe I should look at, expanding the ideas that I've sort of set out in this piece, right? And making it a proper album format. And so looking at what I had written, which was a setting of Leonardo da Vinci's um, writings on building a flying machine, I thought to myself, well, why don't we just write more pieces about the history of aviation. And we'll start with Da Vinci, but then we'll, span the entire history of mankind's quest to conquer the sky, right? So pilots like Amelia Earhart or cosmonauts like Yuri Gagarin, but also like astronomers like Nicholas Copernicus, or even sort of like the sort of philosophical and religious thinkers who explored what it means, on a metaphysical level to be up amongst the heavens. People like Hildegard von Bingen, or Dante Alighieri, right? And it ends with this mammoth 10-minute setting of John F. Kennedy's "We Choose to Go to the Moon" speech, where all of the themes of the previous 10 movements are sort of, reprised in this final colossal finale, right? And that's kind of it. It's this enormous piece with massive choirs and so
Kind of it, just like an entire history of human endeavor. It's just kind of it.
That to me, it's like if you're gonna encapsulate the entirety of humanity's quest to leave the planet and be amongst the stars, it's not really a chamber work. It's kind of like the biggest possible classical work you can possibly think of, Carmina Burana style, right? Host planet style, something absolutely enormous and just monumental in conception. It has to be, right? And so that's why it's so big.
It's amazing. It seems like a really lovely moment to hear a small clip of Sogno.
Let's play it.
Yeah, here it comes. This is, whereabouts does this fall within the album, Chris?
This is the very opening track. Sogno Di Volare means the dream of flight. And just so you know, the motif that you hear in Sogno, this one that, the four phrase structure around this theme, it becomes a recurring motif across the entire album, right? It's like a leitmotif connecting everything together. It's the dream of flight, right? And it always calls us back to the sky. Sogno Di Volare.
Go. And your string writing, Christopher, is so compelling. It's so exciting. And what tends to come first when you're writing? Do you sit down at the piano? I know we've had a question come in from one of the stay-at-home choir members about it. Where does it start?
It starts purely at the piano. What I will tend to do is I will sit down at generally not a like a real piano. I'll sit down at a keyboard that's plugged into my computer, sort of like this one. Actually, let me show you. This is my desk. It's actually a keyboard that's built into a desk. So I don't know if you can see this here, but
cool.
It's connected to my computer, and I will just hit record, and I won't use a metronome or anything. I'll just kind of let the system record everything I'm playing. And then I'll just sort of, noodle around, play stuff, right? Just kind of like let my mind roam free for hours on end, just trying things. Every once in a while, I'll just play something. I'll play like a Beatles tune or a Stevie Wonder tune, or I'll play an old piece of mine, or just just anything, just to kind of like throw notes around and just have notes sort of flying around in the air. And then what I find is that sometimes something happens that makes me think, let's explore that a little further, right? So this particular piece came about from one of these late night sessions where I was doing this. And, at a certain point, I just played this, right? And then my wife comes in from the living room and she says, "Oh, I like that." And then she walks out. And then at that point, I thought, okay, well, this is clearly going to be my next hit because, I managed to lure my wife in, and she managed to comment on it, and so we're going to run with this, right?
Seal of approval, is it? Is she very discerning when it comes?
Yeah,
to
exactly. Yeah. She doesn't get swayed by much. Let's put it that way. So she comes in, and I thought, okay, I have her stamp of approval, so now I know this is my idea, and I'm gonna run with it. The original composing of this piece, I didn't have very much time at all, actually. I only had about 3.5 weeks to compose and record the piece, compose and record, and that's just the nature of deadlines, right? But managed to get it out in time, make the recording that you just heard, which is the one that's featured on the game.
Yes,
and yes, and just got it out there,
Wow, and that is such a fast turnaround for what then became the kernel, the centerpiece of this epic album, which is To Shiver the Sky. Did you want to go back and rework things and change things, or were you kind of like, actually, Sogno as it stands I'm happy with it. Let's now take out these themes and extrapolate it and just see how it flowers. Which way did it go?
I actually made some minor adjustments when I re-recorded it for my new album. First of all, I took a more classical recording direction with this one. I mean, the version that you just played, which is on the game, it's sort of hyper-produced the way that, say, a movie trailer would be produced. Lots of very loud, bright percussion right up front, just very sort of compressed and slamming. And it works very well for a video game. When you're talking about the opening track of a classical album, if you start with something that is hyper compressed and sort of hyper realistic like that, you don't leave yourself much room to grow, right? And so I took a much more acoustic and natural sort of approach to the re-recording of the piece that you hear on the album. And actually, the version that we'll be singing to, with the stay-at-home choir, will be the orchestrations, the new orchestrations as recorded by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra that appear on my album. So, I never fully feel like something is 100% done. Usually what happens is I record it, and when the sessions roll around, I run out of time to fiddle with things. And then when it's released out into the world, that's it. That's what I have to live with, kind of, right? But
is there a sort of motivating factor to having a deadline?
I mean, it gets me off my butt and gets me writing. I mean, truth be told, I don't like to work that fast. I would much rather spend a lot of time perfecting ideas and getting things absolutely right. And I mean, you don't always have that luxury. In fact, most of the time you don't. I rarely have that luxury anymore. And so there's this constant sort of sense of like incompletion that I have to live with, which honestly drives me crazy because I'm a very, right, I'm kind of a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And so shortchanging myself time, and nothing ever feels right to me, even though it might be right, just because I didn't have the chance to just sort of like go over in my head mentally and exhaust all possible options and just feel 100% about it. It just never feels good.
Yeah. So interesting that you're talking about the differences in the recording style from the track which was featured on Civilization 6 and the new recording with the chorus of the Royal Opera House and the Royal Philharmonic. Should we maybe listen to a little excerpt of the end of Sogno from the new recording? There we are. of the track that we're going to be singing. And Chris, when you say epic, that's just the first track on the album. It gets bigger from there, really, doesn't it?
It does this, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there are some enormous moments on the album. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was listening to a lot of opera in the last couple of years, right? And that's why I sort of gravitated to the sound of an opera chorus because, I mean, it's such a rich, thick sound, and I thought it was just so appropriate for the content of this piece and Sogno Di Volare in particular. And like as I was composing it too, this is gonna sound like such a cliche, but I kept thinking up ways to make it even more epic and big, right? Like, I mean, the at the very end there, that clip that you play, an enormous cathedral organ comes barreling in at the end there, right? Um,
Incidentally played by the daughter of one of our members.
yes, that's right. So Anna Lapwood plays the organ. We recorded her at Temple Church in London. We had a great time. And I mean, one of the things that I like to do in my music actually is I like to introduce a little tiny little surprise at the ends of pieces whenever possible. And sometimes that's just, a slight harmonic shift or something like that. Or sometimes it's like, hello, organ, here you are, right? So it's just a little device that I like to use in my compositions just to get people perked up right until the last seconds of a piece because I think that's what encourages people to want to listen to the piece all over again too. You end strong. You really have to end strong, and I like strong endings. So that's why suddenly, hello, hallelujah. Here's a cathedral organ at the end.
And from the big, rich, thick sounds of the Royal Opera House chorus, which is obviously a chorus of experienced, large voiced professionals, to this next project we've got coming up in January, which is sort of the other end of the spectrum, but no less epic. It's a chorus of thousands and thousands and thousands of music lovers from all over the world. Like, how do you feel about that?
I'm so excited. Are you kidding? I mean, hopefully you've picked up on a little bit of my excitement from all my social media posts and so forth. But I think it's going to be great. I mean, I love big sounds. I love huge productions, and I love big thoughts, right? And I mean, to me, there's no bigger thought than a worldwide choir coming together to sing music together. I mean, it's just it's going to be a very visceral and exciting sound and just a visceral and exciting experience just doing this and making this product. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Again, I hope you picked up on that from the me dancing around to the track. And whenever this has been coming for a while, hasn't it? We've been planning this since May of this year, and it's finally coming to fruition. And over the last few months, when Jamie and I, my co-founder Jamie and I, have needed a little bit of a pep. We've just put Sonia on and just had a little boogie on it to it over just waiting for the moment where we could tell the rest of the membership what we've got coming up. And this is intended to be a sort of getting to know you session, which works both ways. So hello to anybody who hasn't yet heard of the Stay at Home Choir. We are a project founded by me, Tori Longdon, and my co-founder and colleague and friend, Jamie Wright, in the UK. And we founded it in March 2020. God, it's been such a year. To bring people together during the COVID pandemic. But it's turned into something that we hope has wider reaching benefits and value to the musical community, which is that kind of removes the boundaries of geography from collaborating with people. On a global scale. So we've been joined by all sorts of people from all across the world, people who are working shifts and can't make it to choir rehearsals, people who just have a random life and are not going to be in the same place every week, people who have trouble leaving their house for whatever reason, people who are expats and live in a country which doesn't have the kind of music that they want to sing or doesn't have music close enough, people who live in the sticks and would have to drive an hour and a half to get to a choir rehearsal. These kind of people, along with I think a core of people who love to sing and have been missing it and have discovered a new way to meet people who are not necessarily local to make music, and most importantly, to meet artists, to meet wonderful artists in a way that maybe you'd get, I don't know, a couple of singing days a year when you'd be able to meet and hear about the music directly from the people who wrote it, and from the ensembles that sing it. And this has been the real joy of working over the last 8 or 9 months, is to be able to have first-hand input from amazing composers from all across the world, such as yourself, to take us that step closer to the music. So we feel like we come away with a deeper, better, more rounded understanding of the pieces that we're singing. And then every time it comes on the radio or we hear it, left, right, and centre, you go, I know that. I've met the guy. I've talked about it. I've explored it. And just to bring us all closer together. There have been lots of things in 2020 that I feel have driven us further apart. And I think that one of the peripheral benefits is that there have been a few things that have enabled us to come closer together. And I'm really looking forward to continuing that in 2021 with you, Chris. So if you haven't heard of us before, this is who we are, this is what we do. And the project is starting on the 15th of January. So it is a pay-as-you-feel project, which is all part of our aim to be as accessible as possible to everybody. We don't want to place any barriers to involvement, but we do need to cover our costs. So the minimum donation, I think, is £1, or you can join the wait list and we then work out how many places we can afford and we just let people in tranches. But we have a suggested donation of £15, which covers our costs. And projects in the past have had between 3,000 and 5,000 people involved for each project. So it's huge, but you should still be able to see yourself if you look really, really hard. And we produce virtual choir videos at the moment because we're not allowed to meet. And so you can check out on our YouTube channel anything that we've done in the past. We've had 6 releases in December, so our YouTube channel is quite full at the moment. And the last one is coming out on Christmas Eve. So there we go, that's who we are and what we do. And so when we kick off in January, Chris, we're going to be seeing you in rehearsals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at your beck and call. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here, and you just tell me where you want me. So
That's really great. And we had a question coming in from somebody who's asking about the Italian. Like, how did you develop the text? It's taken from the writings of Leonardo da Vinci. How did you develop the text into the form that we're actually going to be singing?
Okay. So there are a few stories behind this. So the reason I chose the text, first of all, is because, as I mentioned before, this was a theme for Civilization 6, right? And there's a Da Vinci quote that figures prominently in that Civilization series of games. It's the quote that goes, "For once you have flown, you will always look at the sky, for that is your home, and that is where you long to return." That sort of periodically appears in the game. And so I thought, let's use that as the basis for this new theme, right? Now, the thing is, there's two problems with that. One, actually, Leonardo never actually said that. That's just one of these, I know it's so good, right? It's just one of these internet things, right? Or like pop culture things that just kind of happens over the years. A misattributed quote. Like, it happens a lot, right? So there was no original writing to draw from. The second thing is, even if there was, and you could decipher his, secret code in his notebooks or whatever, it would have been written in Latin anyway, right? I wanted to get away from Latin a little bit. If you know my music, it covers wide linguistic territory. I mean, my most popular song is sung in Swahili. I've written pieces in Xhosa, Sanskrit, Portuguese, Mandarin, Proto-Indo-European, Old Norse, ancient Greek. Like, I almost everything under the sun has been set to music in my world at one point or another. And I wanted to do something that was, just fresher and more sort of contemporary. And so I decided I want to do this in Italian, right? And so I reached out to my friend, Chiara Cortez, who's a singer in Italy. And I said, can you help me take this Da Vinci quote and, sort of reshape it to this melody? I'd already had the melody in mind. And so she took basically the gist of the phrase, kind of converted it to something metrical. And then that's where we are right now. So Italian is actually, I've seen a lot of questions online about this. Italian is not a hard language to sing in. It's not quite as easy as Latin. There's some more complicated vowel sounds here and there, but I mean, in the pantheon of languages, it's a great one to sing in, and it's not all that difficult. I mean, compared to, say, singing in French, for example, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, with all of the strange vowel modifications. That actually brings me really nicely on to a question we've had from Janet Folger, who said, how hard is it for an English speaker to actually sing in Italian and sound reasonable? Now, is this something that, well, I'd like to just first say that we're going to have Italian vocal coaching throughout the project, and that's included with the project. So once we kick off on the 15th of January, there'll be sessions specifically scheduled for sort of people who want to get their Italian up to speed. But do you think it's particularly difficult for English speakers? We have lots of people from all over the world speaking lots of different languages. Do you think English and Italian are going to marry together okay?
I think they will. I think if you're primarily an English speaker, you actually have a lot of the vowel sounds of a lot of different languages already sort of inherently, in your mind, your mouth, right? I mean, it's not that much of a stretch. Like there are some languages out there, Slavic languages, for example, that are immensely challenging for English speakers. I mean, the nuances between all the different vowels is very tricky. And having written a few pieces in Polish, for example, I know it's always a challenge trying to get English speakers to pronounce Polish. Italian, much easier, I think. The vowel sounds fundamentally are pure. There are some elisions that you'll have to watch out for, but other than that, it's a very easy to pick up language, I think.
That's great. Well, we can't wait to get our teeth into it. And speaking of languages, you've spoken about the massive range of different languages that you've written in. And we actually had a question in from a lady, from a Flemish lady called Anne, who's asked if you ever intend to write in Flemish, or what's it like to compose music with words in so many different languages? And how do you go about doing it if it's a language that you don't actually speak yourself?
So to answer the first question, maybe. I mean, maybe I will compose something in Flemish. I think for me, it's not just about arbitrarily picking a language and saying, oh, I just want to write something in that. There has to be a connection to a larger story, right? So let's say, I decide to do an album about like, you know, mercantile interests in the Middle Ages in Western Europe or something like that, and I decide to set part of it in Bruges, and then I find some old text that relates to history in some way by some well-known Flemish poet that fits into the story, then yes, absolutely, I will try to go as authentic as possible. The reason I branch out to all of these languages is because they sort of fit into the context of the greater stories that I'm trying to tell, which sort of tie a neat little string around all of human history, right? There is an album about, for example, the water cycle, that traces the way water flows through the world from, clouds to snow to rivers to the ocean, back to clouds again. And I drew text from all these different cultures that spoke about water in the way that water was important to their particular culture, right? And so that's why I wound up writing pieces in Lango and Xhosa and Mongolian, right? The second part of your question was what? Sorry?
How do you set it if you don't?
How do you set? Oh, right. Collaborators. I absolutely lean heavily on a network of collaborators who help me figure out the pronunciation of languages, but also what syllables get the important stresses. I mean, there's a lot that I do with, for example, Google Translate. If I just need to know what this one little word in ancient Greek is, or or in Italian or any language, I'll just plug it in and make sure I know that that's not a word that I hold out on a long note, for example. Right?
Wonderful technology that we have nowadays that gives us all these tools at our disposal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the internet, for good or for ill, I mean, I like to think of it as this giant repository of knowledge that's at your fingertips. That's what the internet is the best at, right? And so this album and all my music could not have happened without Wikipedia, without Google Translate, without all of these tools. And I mean, the internet is a connecting element in this world. I mean, we're obviously here now because of the internet, right? But what I've also found is that, you know, even if I go really far down the rabbit hole and I find some really ancient language that is completely unknown to everyone, such as Proto-Indo-European, right?
Wow.
This root language, which is the stem language that all of our modern languages come forth from. Um, there's always some college professor out there who's devoted his entire life work to studying Proto-Indo-European, and he's super excited that I just wrote him an email asking him about, how to pronounce Proto-Indo-European. So, this music, these collaborations never would have been possible without having the internet at my fingertips.
Absolutely. And something that you just touched on there is that it connects people. It connects people with the same interests, with the same loves, to geek out together essentially and produce something truly fantastic. And that's what it is that we're so excited to do with you when we embark on our journey of human endeavor in January to sing this wonderful piece with you. And can you believe it? We're out of time. That's all we've got time for. And it's been so lovely to talk to you and hear about just the richness of your work and how much research goes into it, and how I'm looking forward to learning about more about the different individuals into Shiver the Sky as we get into the project, and sharing that with all of our singers and all of our members. So if you fancy joining in, it's super easy to do so. People of Facebook, go to www.stayathomechoir.com, and you'll see a lovely little Earthrise shot, which is actually taken from the music video of the new album To Shiver the Sky. And you can click on that and sign up. It's super easy to do so, and you'll get put on an email list that gives you all the information you need. This is a virtual choir project. So if you've seen Chris's previous little video about it, all you need is a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, and some headphones. And it might sound complicated, just give it a shot and you'll find it's actually pretty easy to do. And if you have a smartphone, tablet, laptop, and a pair of headphones, you will be fine. So head to the website, sign up, and give it a go. If you've not yet tried singing in an online choir, January is the time to do it. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And go and enjoy the rest of your day working in your beautiful Stanley studio.
Thanks, Tori. It's great chatting with you as well. It's good to meet you all, Stay at Home Choir. I look forward to chatting with you more in the future. And if you haven't signed up already, sign up.
Hurrah! I'm going to play out with that wonderful Royal Opera House, Royal Philharmonic Orchestra recording of Sogno Di Volare. Here it is.